the Sigma f1.4 Art Series lens. Now, for those who are brief on time, I often spoil my reviews by telling you right up front my verdict or my conclusion, and I can tell you when you stack this lens up against the Canon f1.2 or the Canon f1.4, it blows them away in sharpness and clarity, lack of chromatic aberration, lack of distortion. It is an amazing lens. Now, if you're interested and want to keep watching, I'm going to share some samples between all three of these lenses in just a few moments, but let's talk a little bit about their similarities and differences on the outside. So, all of them offer 50mm focal lengths. We got two f1.4s, and we have the Canon f1.2. Really nice construction on the Sigma. I think in the past there have been, or I know that there have been stigmas against third-party manufacturers. Their quality control hasn't always been good, leading to inconsistent results. Corner sharpness on some of their higher level lenses has not been as good as typically you see from Canon or Nikon lenses. But Sigma has really just put that to bed with these new Art Series lenses. You've got the 35, which we picked up a couple of months ago and have been ecstatic with the quality out of it. So as soon as the 51.4 was announced, I put in an order for it, and it arrived just about 2 weeks ago now. We've been shooting with it for about 2 weeks. Multiple weddings, multiple engagement sessions, and consistently amazing quality. As I said, we'll look at some samples in a second. It's got this kind of metal plastique construction, really nice big focus ring, full-time manual focus distance indicator, and of course it's got a solid metal mount here. It's heavy and hefty. They've used this retrofocal design inside. It's a little different than other 50 manufacturers, and it makes it big and heavy. Much lighter is the Canon 51.4, also much cheaper. The Art Series lens comes in at about $950 price point. This comes in at about $400 price point, sometimes a little lower if you can find it on sale. Very nice, full-time manual focus as well. It's ultrasonic motor, and it's got a little distance indicator tucked in there as well. Much more plastic feeling though, and of course, as I said, lighter. And finally, you have what has been the champ for many years for Canon shooters who don't want to pay thousands of dollars for a Zeiss, is the Canon 51.2 L series, professional level glass. Very similar construction, this kind of plastic distance indicator, full-time manual focus with a slightly smaller focus ring, and you can see that, of course, the size differences between the two are noticeable. Weight difference, even the fact that the 51.2 is shorter, there isn't a huge weight distance. The Sigma is heavier, but it's not as big as they look in differences. So, it shouldn't be no secret if you watch some of my other videos that I love prime lenses. The quality, the value, those wide open apertures that they give you to allow you to kind of creatively control the look of your image. So we've been talking about on the podcast, very soon we're going to be selling the 51.2 and probably picking up another 51.4. When I say we, I'm talking about Christina Bernales Photography and myself. We shoot weddings, engagement sessions, events, things of that sort. Why would I be willing to sacrifice a third of a stop for the Sigma? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, this comes in at a price point of about $1,400, so you can save $500-ish, $400-ish, depending, dollars. That's important to me. And second is the sharpness. The Sigma, just as I said at the beginning of this, blows away the 51.2 in the center, out to the corners, consistently. Also notice a difference in focusing speed. The Sigma is better, and focusing consistency. The Sigma is better. It really becomes a no-brainer. Let's take a look at a few samples now. Now, all taken with the 5D Mark III at various apertures. We took many images at each aperture and found the sharpest one, and then used that to compare against the sharpest one from the other lenses. So we have the Sigma 50. Notice it doesn't come up as Sigma, just 50. The Canon 51.2 and the Canon 51.4. We're just going to run through a couple samples. The Canon 51.2 is always red. The Sigma is always blue. Let me make sure that's right. Yes. And the Canon 51.4 is always purple. So let's jump right in at 51.4, the first aperture that all of them share together, and make some comparisons. Sigma's on the left, Canon is on the right. Now, one thing I want you to notice is we do have slightly different shutter speeds. I noticed that there is about of a third of a stop difference in light transmission between the Canon and the Sigma. That is to say that the Canon lets in about a third more stop of light. I believe that's due to the lens coating that Sigma is using. So at f1.2, you're talking about a third of a stop, but actuality, there's an additional third of a stop more light that the Canon is capable of letting in. That is a noticeable difference in exposure, but as we're about to dive into these two images, I show you the difference in sharpness is enough that I am happily willing to forego that, what we're talking about, a 2/3 total stop of light difference. So we have the Sigma on the left, this is the center of the frame, and we have the Canon on the right, and you can see that there is a noticeable difference in sharpness. The Sigma is sharper. When we come out to the edge, everything gets a little bit softer out at the edge, but you can see that the Canon gets significantly sharper, whereas the Sigma holds the sharpness fairly well. And up here in the detail, that little speck versus that little speck over there, just a little bit sharper. Not a huge difference, but certainly still sharper on the Sigma side. Let's take a second and compare the Sigma versus the Canon 51.4. So we have the Sigma on the left now and the 51.4 from Canon on the right, and you can see that again, sharpness. So the Canon comes in at about $400, the Sigma is about $950, but you can see that the Sigma still clearly is a sharper lens. Let's move up a little bit and see how these do in apertures getting better. We've got the 51.4 now at 1.2, and I think this is our 1.2 here. Now let's take a look at f2.8. We've got the Sigma on the left, the Canon 1.2L on the right. Again, remember we're going to seeing that 1/3 stop difference, but when we zoom in here at f2.8, we can still see that the Sigma is clearly sharper, so the Canon has not caught up or matched up with it as well. And when we go up to, let's go to a different corner this time, let's go to our bottom right corner. When we head down to the bottom right corner, we can see that we've got a good bit of sharpness still in the Sigma. Really nicely done. Now, one other thing that I'm noticing here is it's slight, but we have just a little bit more distortion. This line here, a little bit of bowing to that line. I don't see it quite as much at the bottom, but right there I notice it. And over here I do not notice that as much. The Sigma is just distortion free. And this is a tiny amount of distortion, hardly worth talking about, but there it is. Now let's take a look and pop the 51.4 in on the right now and zoom into the center. And you can see that the 51.4 is quite a good performer. Still not quite as sharp, but it is very, very close. Let's go up to the top right corner and see how it looks. You can see that up here in the top right corner, this is a noticeable difference now between the Canon on the right and the Sigma on the left. Here we are at f4. We're starting to get into those apertures that should be the great equalizer, meaning all lenses work similar. And we zoom into the center and we can see that there is very similar detail and sharpness. Sigma still is a little bit sharper. Let's go straight up. And we can see that they are just about even now up at f4, but below that, pretty significant difference. And you can see getting out to the edges here, it is a toss-up. Let's compare them against the Canon 51.4. Very, very similar. Sigma still has a little bit of sharpness. Let's go down to the bottom left corner. And we can see that it does definitely stay sharper out at the corners consistently. All right, we've jumped up to f8. And we can see that the sharpness and the quality between the two are very similar. Let's go to a corner. Sigma still has sharpness ahead of the Canon in the corners at f8. Let's pop that over to the Canon 51.4 and see that the 51.4 actually looks like it does a little bit better than the 51.2 in the corners at f8. One thing I meant to mention is the one other benefit that the 50 f1.2 does offer is weather sealing. The Sigma is not weather sealed, so if you're going to be shooting in the elements often, that is a consideration, but I think as you saw here, that the 50 f1.4 from Sigma is an incredibly sharp and consistent lens. Now I want to just take a moment to illustrate the difference between a 50mm focal length on a crop sensor like the Canon 70D versus a full frame sensor like the 5D Mark III. I caution you that for some work you may find the 50mm focal length on a crop sensor a little long, and you can see here shots from standing at the exact same location, and it's a good bit of a tighter shot. Really nice for these kind of torso or tighter headshots, but if you're trying to do fuller length body portraits, not as good, and maybe you would want to consider something like the 35. And here's an example of the 35mm on a crop sensor and the 50mm on a full frame sensor on the right. This was a pretty straightforward review. Sometimes reviews are incredibly easy. If you are looking for an incredibly sharp, good value prime lens, this Sigma 50-1.4 is your answer. If you are on a budget and you're looking for a 50mm lens, the Canon 50-1.4 does a very good job. Now I just want to repeat quickly that 50mm focal length on a crop sensor though can get kind of long, so you may want to consider the Sigma 35 f1.4, which I haven't officially reviewed yet, but we've actually been using it for longer than the 50-1.4 and have found it to be excellent as well. And then of course Canon's got a 35 f2 with IS that does quite well also. So those might be better options for your crop sensor shooters. 50 is beautiful on a crop sensor if you're trying to do nice tight headshots. If you appreciated this review and you watched this long, I think you did, please press that subscribe button. That is the easiest way to thank me and helps me produce videos like this. There are other ways that you can thank me. Just right down below is a link to the Facebook page where we have a great community of folks all interested in photography, talking to each other. I post deals, tips, tricks, all kinds of things there. Come on over and like that page. And there's a newsletter you can subscribe to also. About once a week I put out, and those newsletter subscribers have a few extra benefits of getting their images seen in weekly photo contests and put up as the cover page on the Facebook page. If you've got any questions, just leave them right down below. If you have thoughts about what 50 is best for you, I'd love to hear them. And if you don't know much about primes, you should spend a few moments watching my 5 Reasons Prime video that went up a couple weeks ago. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe.